Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 13 of my journey through Path of Exile 2's Dawn of the Hunt League. Today is going to be my last video of Path of Exile 2 for at least the next couple of weeks, as I am looking forward to jump in to see what Last Epoch has going on with their new launch. I've pretty much finished up this character that I've been playing, the Explosive Spear Amazon. I really honed in on just this one character, pushing it through as much of the end game as I can, and trying to craft stuff to continually improve the character. And I'll kind of be wrapping up my thoughts on the state of things as we go, and I want to make another attempt at clearing a Simulacrum today. So make sure to hit that like button and let's jump in. Last time I made it to level 93. I was able to get a ring, giving me the mana leech and the cold res that I was looking for. Wound up not getting a life on it, but got the new gloves worked in that have life. Resistances are all decently capped, over 90% to deal with elemental weakness curses. Chaos res is capped. I had to use a soul core for that. And then I tried putting in the soul core of Jequanui, giving 2% increased life, but my life pool is not quite high enough for it to have been better than just another 40 flat life rune, because there's no life on my helmet, no life on this ring, no life on my boots, no life on my shield. So I could continue grinding and grinding and grinding and trying to get those things while keeping the resistances capped up. But the in-game grind for loot is kind of rough, I would say. It's got me picking up every single drop of the top tier bases that I'm looking for, and then hoping they roll something on them. If that doesn't happen, you go into reforge them until maybe you get mods that you'd be willing to regal and then use exalts on to try and get multiple mods on gear. But most likely you're only going to have maybe 2 or 3 good mods that way on a piece of gear. There's no way to guarantee that everything is good on an item. But then there's also the recombinator. Let's say, well, I want this evasion and this evasion. There's a 34% chance of that. I can get those 2 mods together on an item, but if it doesn't give me said item, then those boots just disappear, which is what is going to happen here. Just poof, gone. Both of those boots, done. Nothing I can do with those anymore. I have to farm more bases. So you end up limited in crafting based on the number of bases that you're able to farm. The last time I tried to go through helmets, I have a rare helmet and a magic helmet left over. I can't really reforge those anymore. So if I want to try to go after getting a helmet replacement at this point, I just have to keep grinding and grinding and grinding to get more bases. It's not really a matter as much of the currency you have. And then almost every single point of it is a gamble. Yes, you can get essences. I strayed away from farming essences in this league because I wanted to check out the shrines and strong boxes. The strong boxes have been very, very nice, speccing into researcher strong boxes at giving me valuable currency. If I found a white researcher strongbox, I could alch it, and most times I would replenish the alch I spent, and I was gaining exalts, chaos, vol orbs. I was getting a lot of good currency income there. And then the shrines have been very nice. I specced into enlightening shrines, which give XP bonuses, a chance for shrines to have an additional effect. But what I really kind of like the most about this is the elemental shrines, giving you damages extra fire, cold, or lightning. There's also the gloom shrine that explodes enemies. It gives you extra damage as chaos. The shrines can kind of make just about any build feel a lot better by just giving it a bunch of extra damage, especially if you get the effect and duration buffs on Seasonal Blessing here. The shrines are very, very good. And in the last patch, they made them easier to click on. The Asbury Wisps, I didn't find super rewarding. It seemed like the most useful thing to come out of them was occasionally when they drop their talismans, and the talismans definitely have cool effects depending on your build. But even if I were to spec into these, there's not much that's going to increase the value out of them, it doesn't seem. But as I'll go over in a minute, they have plans to upgrade that in an upcoming patch. Essences I also did not spec into at all. Chance to corrupt essence additional time in here. Increased chance for greater essences, which could be very useful in crafting. You can kind of spec it towards the essences you're looking for. So there's definitely possibility that you can use essences to a greater degree in crafting rather than just transmute, augmenting, regaling items. That is something that's there, but even then it's still a gamble, even though you're trying to tip the scales in your favor. Like if you're trying to get life on a ring, you could end up getting life leech or life on kill or other things with one of those essences. And the last of the content, the Rogue Exiles. I did not spec into Rogue Exiles either. There is a way to shift the item requirements that they have equipped, chance to favor certain types of uniques, but I generally found them fairly rewarding because it seems like the best place to get guaranteed jewelry, as they will drop 2 rings and a belt and an amulet every single time you find one. So quite often it will give you something that you might be able to work off of. And I've picked up every single ring and amulet and I store them. Most of the amulets that I have in this dump here came from Rogue Exiles, actually. Amulets are rare to get to drop. The same with rings. And then with rings, though, I have spent most of my gold buying rings here from Alva. You could also do the same with amulets, but you're not going to get as many of those rings just to drop like you do the other gear. As like I'm just piling up useful spear bases so that maybe I might be able to find good mods and try and recombinate or something, but even then most of the time like they don't really hit and you end up 3-to-1ing them in the reforging bench until you run out of bases and have to farm more. That seems to be the larger limiting factor on any kind of crafting than it is the currency. It's fairly easy for me at this point to go, I want to go farm more Exalted Orbs. And so at this point it's pretty much for me just been grind more bases so that I can maybe try and get some kind of item. The spear I ended up with is not terrible. It has flat fizz, and percent fizz accuracy on it with a little bit of attack speed. I really wanted base crit on a spear. And then the prefixes, there's different things you can do. Really big accuracy can work really nicely with the Amazon, but after the last 2 trips through here to try and craft something, I've not replaced this spear. I've used, I think, 3 different spears since I got to endgame. One I used from Act 3 Cruel all the way up into T15 maps. Then I've gotten 2 replacements since then. Getting something that is useful, it's really hard. So next, I want to talk about unique items. There were a lot of uniques added into this patch, and I did find some things that I might be interested in using. Primarily these bushwhack boots, causing physical damage to be pinning, since I was using my Whirling Slash to build up pins, but I had to give up the ability to cause stuns. So using these bushwhack boots, I would then be able to remove the pin support and be able to build up stuns with my Whirling Slash. My big issue with this is that across my gear, I seem so heavily strapped into the resistances that I have on my gear. It has become difficult to replace gear because I need to make sure my resistances stay capped up here. If I were to put these boots on, now I'm low in lightning res and cold res, and I'd need to do something to fix that, which would be by dropping more life in order to cap the resistances up with my runes. And that is really the only option I have to raise my resistances. But there's also no life on these boots, no resistances on these boots. The only thing it's giving that is really unique is the physical damage is pinning. So it makes it really hard to want to commit to that because the requirements of all the other gear just goes up. And I wasn't getting life on these boots without the rune socket in it. But say I wanted to put other pieces on. These gloves don't have life, but converts fire damage into lightning, could make my explosive spear do lightning damage instead of its fire, which would be cool to experiment with, but there's no resistances here, and I've got 2 resistances on this that are above 14%. You can only get 14% per rune you slap into these. And let's say since I'm using Cloak of Flame, it'd be nice to raise my max fire res, use Inferno class, but getting the resistances across all these pieces to make putting a bunch of uniques on your character for their unique benefits seems really, really difficult. And I relate that more to the fact that there's no resistances on this tree, really. In PoE 1, I have the option to forego things that are good on my passive tree to like get resistances or more life in order to allow me to put on some of the different unique items. So by putting on these boots, for say, in here, I could recoup some of that lost resistances that I'm giving up from this boot slot, and then maybe give up some damage on the tree to recover that. There's no really options to build in that way on this tree. You really kind of have to build into some kind of defense, which I've gone for high evasion, cap block with glancing blows, and then I spec'd into damage and crit because that works well with the buffs I'm getting from the Amazon. And very similar to 0.1 when I played PoE 2, I end up feeling like I'm speccing my tree into what is pretty much my only option. I don't feel like there are really strong choices to make with regards to the passive tree. I don't have to choose between damage and survivability because I get all of the evasion stuff that's nearby, I get all of the damage stuff that's nearby, and that's pretty much my passive tree. I don't have to choose between evasion and life. I don't have to choose between crit or capping resistances on my character. I just kind of got everything close that I wanted. And that feels about the same that it was on the other characters that I played. It doesn't feel like there's really any meaningful choices to make on the passive tree because there's no resistances or life there. And a lot of people have expressed opinions about the state of defenses and things. I believe if there was life and resistances on the passive tree, like even spread throughout it, it would change the equation entirely. Right now, a lot of evasion players are saying that their effective HP is high enough, so they're being forced into evasion energy shield hybrids, which they don't want to do. They should be able to invest in a bit more life to improve their ability to take a hit. I ended up solving this by using Cloak of Flame. The big fizz hits, I turn a bunch of that into fire because there are a lot of AoE hits in the game that you're not able to block or evade. So you're going to take those bigger slam fizz hits regardless. So you have to have some way of mitigating that, which you really don't have options for outside of this one singular node right here, which gives 5% fizz damage taken as a random element. So you can mitigate a bit of that if your resists are capped, but Cloak of Flame does that with 40% instead of just that 5. I think it was Zizarin that was asking about resistance being on the tree before you're able to get it on gear, but I feel like I'm looking for the resistances and life more because I want to explore with the unique items. And being an SSF player, I'm not going to be able to just like get super GG resists across my gear. Trust me, I've tried. I got a lot of resistances on the shield, and because of that, I had to sacrifice the potential evasion rating or life that it could give. And I'm not able to recover that through the passive tree. The only thing the passive tree is really giving me is scaling up the evasion or scaling up my damage. And even with 2 sockets, say, on these gloves, if I put 2 resistances in there, that's 28 resistance. That doesn't even cover a high tier of 1 mod there that I could get from another piece of gear. So it feels like the price to use the uniques is too high at the cost of resistances. That's the big thing that I'm getting here, because like I said, it'd be fun to experiment with these, just like hasn't given me that as a viable option. Also, this time, playing an SSF, greater Jeweler's Orbs are far easier to acquire. I've been getting many more of them than I did last time I played SSF, to the point that I've actually been able to go about corrupting gems to get all of the sockets on 2 of them thus far, even with quality. And then I put 4 sockets in my Spear of Solaris and my Glacial Lance, and then these didn't just corrupt up here on the first try. The Explosive Spear didn't. And while I never got a perfect one, I was at least given the opportunity to get a fully socketed pair of supports on these main gems that I was using. I feel like I was actually more limited on the GCPs than the Greater Jeweler's Orbs to try to create a 5-socket gem, because you can't quality a gem after you corrupt it, though you can raise the level of it after you corrupt it. So I was more limited by GCPs than the Greater Jeweler's Orb, which is better than being limited by the Greater Jeweler's Orbs. I can say that for sure. I'm also kind of saddened that I was not able to use Orb of Chance to try and get a Chernbog's Pillar, as that is a unique item that is on a unique base type called a Black Steel Tower Shield that just doesn't drop. That's not a base item that you can get. So you can't even attempt to chance this. That definitely seemed weird to me, so I wound up not using all my chance orbs. There are very few items that I can think of like that in PoE 1. One which being like Maloney's mechanism, the ornate quiver that has a socket in it, but it is definitely not the norm. So now let's talk more about the in-game systems in general. We were sent on a task to clear Corrupted Nexus to get our Atlas passive points, which I quite enjoyed this compared to what was there before, as I just like kept exploring through the Atlas, going hunting for those Corrupted Nexus to get my passive points, but I was more interested in trying to find the next one than clear the cleansed maps. The cleansed maps definitely add quite a bit of monsters to each map. There are some special effects that can show up in some of them, such as this reduced XP gain for rarity of items. I'm pretty sure this node, if I would have ran it corrupted, it would have had increased XP gain on it. So you kind of have to make that choice, which is interesting, whether or not you want to run the corrupted maps or run the cleansed maps. So I could go through here and clear the corrupted maps with whatever they have before I clear the Nexus and make them cleansed, if they have interesting mods that I want on them. Last time, the only real thing to push for was trying to find the Citadels way out wherever they might show up in the fog and go after those for a pinnacle boss. And then you got your Atlas passives by running different tiers of maps. That wasn't near as fun as this was. It actually was pretty fun to go exploring out through the Atlas and find these things, and then the addition of more unique maps was certainly very cool to find those. And then having less towers, like, allows you to take your towers and turn like an entire region of the map into like this one specific thing that you want to farm. And if you get a bunch of towers together like I did here, you can really stack a ton of different stuff on these maps. So I was focusing on expedition here, so quantity of logbooks, extra explosive radius, explosive placement range. I was able to really juice that up quite a bit using the towers, since I was able to get a bunch of these to overlap in here. I actually did not find it too difficult, at least in 0.2, to find logbooks and find Alaroth in those logbooks to give me passives to buff expedition. There's still one more out there for me, but this ended up being far more accessible than I thought it would have been. I didn't really spec into expedition last time. Breach, I kind of haven't touched all League. They have felt a lot more empty than they did in the past. In 0.1, it felt like you opened a breach and you're just in a fight for your life. You're being swarmed by stuff. It doesn't quite seem like that. And I've had a more difficult time getting catalysts out of my breaches early on than I did previously. But they are also dropping breach splinters in lower tier maps, whereas before all you were getting in lower tier maps was the catalysts, but I really did not invest in it at all. I never used any breach tablets or anything. Same with ritual. I did not invest in ritual at all, but in the limited amount of rituals I did, I feel like I've gotten more omens than I did in all of 0.1. So these are definitely more accessible and you can make use of them. I don't think I got any of the crazy rare ones that are possible, but it is cool that that is a potential avenue you can invest in. But where I did invest a lot outside of Expedition was Delirium. And I'm going to finish up this Simulacrum here in a little bit and go after that. You have to farm Delirium if you want to get a decent anoint on an amulet. So you have to get these distilled emotions, and they've already increased the time that you can spend in a Delirium mirror in a map by 2.5 times. So it's actually fairly decent to plow through a lot of Delirium in the map and you get a bunch of Simulacrum, Splinters, and Emotions, but these top tier ones are very rare to get. I think I got one Despair from the Simulacrum I ran and failed, and I ended up with one Isolation, the rarest one that I got randomly dropped from a map. Otherwise, like, I haven't seen any of these. I think these more rare ones should be more common in higher tier maps. The fact that I'm running like the highest tier content pretty much and still just getting the basic ones of these kind of sucks, because pretty much every like really powerful node, like say this one, you need like these really rare emotions to be able to anoint that on the amulet. Maiming Strike is also a really powerful node. It needs a Despair and an Isolation. The one I ended up getting here, I used my Isolation on, but I needed Disgust and a Fear, so I had to upgrade multiple tiers to get a single Fear to show up. But looking at the big fire nodes up here, that takes 2 Isolations. This one takes Isolation and a Suffering. Freeze buildup even takes an Isolation, +1 cold skills, Isolation, and Suffering. So pretty much no matter what build you're playing, like if you want a strong anoint on an amulet, you have to invest pretty heavily in Delirium, at least in SSF. And then the cost of replacing said amulet becomes very high if you want to like do anything else with that slot. And maybe it wouldn't be so hard to get the higher tier ones if running Simulacrums wasn't so difficult, which they've also mentioned that they're going to change. I'm going to go through this post here once I've finished wrapping up my thoughts. Because of the hunt for the Distilled Emotions, I really wanted to buff the Deliriums to be able to give me more, potentially. I still wish I had the option to spec into the different types of these more in-game content things on the tree, and then maybe have like these buffs be more tied to logbooks and things, but I don't know how that worked with Breach. Breach feels pretty empty unless you were to invest into it, I think. But a lot of the Delirium stuff doesn't feel like it's gonna add what I'm really looking for outside of adding the boss for more Simulacrum Splinters, or this one way up here for more Simulacrum Splinters. I really don't like running maps with emotions applied to them, and I struggled pretty hard to get the Delirium tablets in order to keep adding Delirium to maps, unlike Expedition. Expedition was just dumping them on me, which I was really happy about because I was able to heavily invest into it, and I don't think I was getting that without running Waystones with the emotions applied, and then you add the fog to the map, you change the music of the map, and not something I particularly enjoy. And then, yeah, rituals I really didn't mess with, but always having 4 ritual altars is good. Being able to get increased chance for an audience with the king, that's a good thing to have maybe tied behind the boss, but I wish there was some kind of, like, I want to make my rituals better on the tree, and, like, make my choices here more nuanced. Like, at the moment, I feel pretty set in stone on this. I could just like grind with this. Not, it's like, okay, I want to change this up to spec into this thing or that thing. And nah, it's like, I'm set up to kind of smash maps and that's it. I'm not going to worry about it otherwise. I still wish there was just a lot more going on with the Atlas passive tree. And then I never attempted the Arbiter. I focused more on trying to get myself upgrades than like really trying to chase after Citadels. And these boss difficulty for the rewards you get here is not worth the increase in difficulty at all. So even though I have the ability to spec into another one of these, like it wasn't worth the extra 50% on the boss life and damage, giving the bosses more of a chance to one-shot me. Like it just isn't worth for 10% quantum waystones or 25% rarity. So I wound up speccing out of points of this. And it's not made clear at all how you would progress this further. And well, I think it was nice to have a goal to go through all of these corrupted nexus for the Atlas passive points. I still kind of wish it was more like defeat map bosses in each of the different map types and have some real kind of scavenger hunt thing going on across this to power it up. Kind of like it was to find 5 unique maps, and you didn't have to find all of them. You just had to find 5 different ones. I never found the Essence one. I found Untainted Paradise instead. And I think it'd probably be fairly easy to keep adding stuff and expanding on the things you can do in this. But I've had a lot of fun in the endgame. No joke. We're the last epoch not coming out in a few hours, and wanting to check that out, I'd easily keep grinding on this, keep trying to upgrade it, maybe push after the pinnacle boss and stuff. I actually really didn't start having a lot of fun playing on this until I got into the end game. The campaign was really rough to go through, and I know they've made a lot of changes there, but not super much with regard to like buffing the skills damage that a ton of gotten nerfed going into this patch. I feel like I'm really missing this, though. Not necessarily the map, right, with all the different maps on it. I'm missing the progression through completing all the different maps. Like, even if this was some massive checklist of complete bosses and all the different maps, that'd give me something to like further like push and chase for with whatever reward that might give. Be it expanding the passive tree, the Atlas passive tree, to give more points for like doing this extra thing. I just think it would be really, really cool to be like, oh, I haven't fought the boss of the Bloodwood. What is there? Like, I need to find one of those and go after it. And then there's going to be these rare maps that are up in your mountains. The Vol Foundry. I haven't fought that boss since Act 3 normal. I skipped it in Cruel as well. There's going to be things that are harder to find, as well as it's going to push you towards your citadels, because there's also maps around those that are specific to the citadels that have their own map bosses. So getting like a giant checklist of map bosses completed would be very time consuming and give you something to really work on through the end game. Maybe it's just me, I just think that would be really cool. I think that pretty much covers most of what I wanted to talk about with regards to PoE 2. I've only really played this one character, so I can't talk too much about balance. I only went through the campaign with this one character, and that was rough, and they've made changes since I've done it. And with the passive tree, I think the whole, like, we need more access to defense completely changes if you add life and resistances on here. They just, like, rebalance the whole equation and kind of see where it would go from there. And more access to this kind of stuff, so, like, physical converted into elemental, like, is very, very good for these evasion-only based builds. It'd be cool to have more access to things like that, or like how endurance charges give physical damage reduction in PoE 1. There needs to be more forms of physical damage reduction of some kind. After dropping a Cloak of Flame, I don't see any possible better chest in the game for this build that I'm playing. And I've also probably invested more into defenses than some other players would. Like I got the block, I got the glancing blows, I've got lots of investment in evasion across things. So I pretty much made it work, but it wasn't working until I got Cloak of Flame, because I would get hit by these big hits that I can't evade or block. There has to be some way to deal with that outside of this item, I think. So next here, upcoming plans for 0.2.0G. From GGG, their current plan is to try and get that out as soon as they can, remaining flexible because of the Easter holidays and a New Zealand public holiday next week. Main focus will be to address 2 highly sought after improvements, as well as a flurry of other minor improvements. First improvement is around loot drops. The 3 main changes you can expect around this is to first mitigate unlucky streaks from bosses in the campaign by raising the floor of the quality of their drops. The second is to increase the quality of drops from bosses overall, and the third is to improve the drops from monsters possessed by Asmarian wisps. The second improvement is around corrupted nexuses. They can be difficult and time-consuming to find, and often players progress in Waystone tiers much faster than they can complete the nexuses. We will be reducing the number of nexuses needed to be completed to attain all of your Atlas passive points, and improving visibility of them in the fog on the Atlas map. On top of that, we're also going to improve accessibility to pinnacle content, reduce the difficulty of simulacrums, and also increase the rewards and lower outlying difficulty spikes from remnants and expeditions. These are just some of the changes we'll be working towards deploying over the next couple of weeks. We appreciate all the feedback coming in, and we'll keep an eye on it and keep addressing concerns as we can. And they're wishing everybody a happy Easter weekend. So they're gonna make the simulacrum easier. Well, they've already changed it so that T0 of the pinnacle content, you have infinite respawns. So my plan is to throw myself at it until I win. And I only need 64 Simulacrum Splinters, which isn't that hard to get compared to what it was in 0.1. Probably take me like 8 to 12 maps, I would imagine. And I have Delirious maps around. I've used every tablet that I've gotten my hands on for Deliriums, so I can run a bunch of those, and we'll see what happens with this. I have had a lot of fun playing on the build that I put together. Definitely not doing the meta stuff with the lightning spear, focusing mainly on the explosive spear, generating frenzy charges, getting these big explosive spears, pinning enemies. It's been a lot of fun. I really like the dodge roll in this game. It doesn't give you an insane amount of movement, but I do really enjoy it to get out of certain bad situations. But there are still times where you can kind of get swarmed by an overwhelming amount of things and it be really obnoxious to try and deal with it. Rituals are probably the biggest source of that frustration, because there's things in the rituals that you have to avoid from the ritual, as well as being swarmed with the mobs. It can be quite a bit to handle, but as my character's gotten more and more powerful, it's more capable of dealing with those things. But I'm also pretty heavily spec'd into defense as well. Ooh, another shrine. This one gives me extra damage. I've really enjoyed the shrines. The shrines make me feel powerful. I feel like this build got around to the point where that they were looking for as terms of in-game power. With SSF progression and not having perfect gear, I was able to reach a solid amount of power on the character to where I'm able to approach trying to complete the pinnacle content without too much trouble. It just felt really rough early on. There's 10 Simulacrum Splinters. Getting the character going was pretty rough, and I even think I got pretty lucky getting 2 Greater Jeweler's Orbs before I made it to maps. Really opened up the ability for my character to start to feel strong. The campaign really limits you in power with respect to the Jeweler's Orbs and what support gems you're allowed to use at certain times as well. And I get a Widow Hail off the Rogue Exile. And I do intend to do like a fresh start, new character through the campaign with no uniques or anything to see how the changes have settled in. I will do that here in a couple weeks after I spend some time in Last Epoch. I also wouldn't say I'm like a normal casual player though. I know of multiple people within my community that's like never managed to get through the campaign. It took them too long. They couldn't handle it. And this patch was more geared at improving in-game, but it made a lot of the skills feel way weaker through the campaign as a result of the balance changes for in-game. So it made for quite a slog to get through the campaign, and I think the in-game is so much better. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that you can die in a map and go back in. The extra portals really open things up to be a lot more fun. I just wish more players would have been able to make it to this point, to get to the in-game and explore those changes, because that's where an overwhelming amount of the good came in 0.2. And I hope that early tension can be relieved a bit to make the in-game more accessible. And that's one of the things I'm going to be looking to explore in a couple weeks once more changes have come through, and kind of see the state of that, because even for a veteran player, it took me over 20 hours to get through the campaign. It took me 3 days. If you're just wanting to explore the new in-game changes, that's not something you're going to want to do every 3-4 months when a new league comes around. And further, it's made me not want to level a new character, honestly. And with the Expedition Remnants, I've talked about changing those. This 40% cold pin is rough. The over 100% damage is extra of an element's also really rough. I avoid them always. Regardless of the rewards, like, it's just too dangerous to spec into those, it feels like. That being said, I have found the expeditions to be very rewarding in terms of the drops, the amount of currency and things I'm getting from running the expeditions and maps has felt very good. I can't say that the logbooks feel quite the same, but you do get a lot more of the expedition currency out of them. The monsters didn't drop much, but yeah, as I open up these chests, I should find some amount of things. There's a unique out of one. Yeah, I actually really didn't get much out of that, honestly. I got 3 order artifacts, 1 rare item. That one didn't prove my point much there. I typically get quite a few, like, decent currency drops out of those. The Widow Hail's 206 and an Ice Tomb. I will say in regards to rare enemies, those volatile chaos balls are obnoxious. It is much harder to get your chaos res capped up in game, let alone through the campaign. And those things do so much damage that even when you have capped chaos res, like those things are devastating, those volatile chaos balls. It's really kind of over the top, I'd say. Oh, getting the speed shrine. Oh, it's so good. I actually feel fast when I get the shrine, and I like it a lot. Got another unique from an expedition this time. The increase to the amount of monsters that spawn in the expeditions are very nice. There's a logbook and a T5 stalking spear, prismatic ring, and all the currency I got is really expedition currency. Expedition and the logbook is both broken circle. Ooh, T5 crit chance on a spear. Not one of the bases I was looking for, but that's been hard to find. What about the stalking spear? T7 flat fizz, T7 hybrid fizz. Suffixes are bad, but with a big fizz roll or a big accuracy, that could be pretty solid. Seems pretty far off from my current spear still. Exalt that. It hit a T3 flat accuracy, which is meh. I'll hold that though because it has a nice level hybrid. Hey, a Delirium Precursor Tablet, XP and Speed Shrine, 9 Simulacrum Splinters. Got that one to 5 stacks. I wish the Spear of Solaris did more damage. Even having 5 supports in it, it felt like it was more effort than it was worth the entire time I played this build. And that was supposed to be like the big cool new thing that I would have been able to do later on in this character's progression. Nah, it wasn't. Requires a bunch of stuns or like a big stun on a unique enemy to even have a chance to use it. And then it takes a lot of your better support gems to give it any kind of damage. And even then it's kind of, it doesn't. I've also found that after a while I didn't need to pull out socketed items anymore. And I wasn't upgrading my weapon enough to really need to pull out quality weapons, but I'm constantly feeling the need to pull out quality armor pieces to salvage for more armor scraps. For like 5 different gear slots, takes upwards of 20 of those to quality something up. And if you want to corrupt it, you have to invest that. So that's like an extra tedious thing that I've constantly had to do. So later in the end game, it would be nice if the armor scraps dropped more. But yeah, 135% damage is extra fire. That's so rough. That is so much damage. First Carver, Acrid Wand, +4 to level of flammability. Huh, that's new. Part of the reason I've maybe feeling my expeditions are better could be based on the runic monster markers and stuff I've spec'd into these. Oh, right. I kind of deep dive it the other day, but the Trial of Chaos, there is so much dead space where you have to walk in there. I hate it. Also, for some reason with Delirium, increasing the amount of time the Delirium delays on rare monster kill delays the drops of the loot at the end of it, which is weird, to say the least. Yeah, 75% chaos resist, and like those chaos balls can hit me for like 500. It's ridiculous. So if I had 0 chaos res, I'd pretty much get one shot by one of those chaos balls, and there's 3 of them spawned at a time. Fracturing Orb, Distilled Envy, Expedition Precursor Tablet, T15 map out of a chest. I have had no trouble at all sustaining maps the entire time. I'm not running 6 mod maps. I'm mostly running 2 mod maps. I think I've only failed maybe 2 maps since I made it to endgame. You don't really have the resources to make all your maps rare outside of maybe 3 mods. Here we go. 1, 2. Oh, the 3rd one disappeared, but 2 hits of that like took me down 1,000 with 75 chaos res. So with 50 chaos res, 2 of those almost kills me. Like just barely doesn't. Another Expedition Precursor Tablet. Ooh, Omniphobia. Ooh, he's on a shrine. What is it though? It's a Gloom Shrine. I launched my spear trying to click it. Okay, got it now. Omniphobia, get roasted. Another Delirium Precursor Tablet, let's go. Yay, speed and ice. Let me finish this map up real quickly. 15 Splinters, that's huge. Logbook, 2 Broken Circle. I wish my Simulacrum Splinters wouldn't dump to my tablet dump and instead go to the Delirium tab. 14 more to go. Another Gloam Gown. So I died in this expedition. It warped me to this checkpoint way over here. So then I teleported to this checkpoint up here so I can get back here. If I die in it again, it's going to do the same thing. But if I threw a portal here and I get one shot because I gave them 40 fire pin, I resurrect at checkpoint and I can't make use of my portal. I wish something could be done about that. I could use my portal as a checkpoint. The only damage I gave to these guys was 40 fire pin, and that got me killed not once but twice. But out of the boxes, like level 19 gem, tier 4 sandals, T3 quiver, compared to other things, it's like I'm only getting valuable things from rare monsters or maybe a rare chest. I get a lot of decent stuff from the expeditions. These bound sandals might be good if they exalted movement speed. Let's see. Mana, movement speed. Okay, sure. Save those boots. 9 splinters. That might have been all I needed. Silverthorn, spiked buckler. That is my simulacrum. Okay, I get to try it. I get infinite attempts. I definitely have upgraded things since the last time. I think I failed on wave 9 or 10 because I got overly swarmed and wasn't making proper use of my Glacial Lance to crowd control the swarming enemies. The first few rounds are just going to be easy. T15, 2 Guilts. I got a 3 stacks on that one. Jinbaria, tier 4 item. And the stuff I'm hiding. Regal Shards, Transmute, Augments. I had no trouble at all with Alaroth the first time, or the subsequent attempts either when he was harder. But yeah, this absolutely destroyed me on the first attempt of the simulacrum. The first few rounds, they went okay. No real issue, same as that round. There's an Omniphobia showing up. And it's not like he's gonna be too tough. He's only got like 500,000-600,000 HP. Well, that's not bad. It's more to do with the swarm in here, I feel like. That is where the real challenge shows up. Is that a despair? It is. Huge. Damage is extra fire. Remove charges on hit. Ooh, that's very bad. That is big yikes. Considering how, like, mandatory those charges are for the combos to actually, like, work. And stealing charges in this game is very yikes. It is actually like build breaking. 3 Ires. That one dropped me like nothing compared to the previous ones. Huh. Monster damage with Ellie pin and life is ES. 70% delirious. Here we go. I think this is the room where it got really bad last time. The one with the crop circle in it. Ooh. So, like, maybe there has to be rare enemies. Like, that is where the drop's coming from, maybe. And there's a Kosis. Lovely. Ah. He moves around so much. I gotta deal with the ads first. I can't fight Kosis until the rest of this stuff is gone. And I got blown up from the Ellie pin on the Molten Shell. Come on. Well, damage plus multi-pin, or the Ellie pin. Ellie pin itself wouldn't have done it. Ah! Okay, infinite resurrects. Let's go. We got this. This Molten Shell dude. Get him out of here. Okay. And the Kosis doesn't have an unbearable amount of HP. I can handle it. There's still an ad in here. Ah, so much energy shield. Hard to get through that. There he goes. This one dropped me, yeah, the last one dropped like nothing. And I died in this one. So life damage, Ellie res, free shock ignite build up. At least they're not going to steal my charges. Like, I need my stuff. Like, if I need to use my Glacial Lance, like, I need to have the charge so that it actually, like, does something. Okay. Fire that. Hopefully freeze some stuff. Focus on the rare. I don't have time to really think about, like, okay, I need to mark and get my charge and move and fire the different things. I think I made it through this round, though. Sure. 2 Ires and a Greed. Not as much drops. Wave 9. Life. Life is ES. Movement speed accuracy. Alright, let's see. I am doing enough damage to kill things. for the time being. Not completely swarmed yet. I can fire the lance anyways. Just to limit it a bit. And mana siphoner, yeah, I ran out of flasks. Okay, but I don't have charges, so I can't fire the lance. I have to pin something, which I did not manage to do there. I got them away from the spawn. I didn't die over there, but managed. Oh, okay, wave 9. One rare item, okay. Life, damage, Res, and accuracy. This one's really narrow as well. And this is my 100% delirious. I have enough damage that I'm killing stuff, though, this time. And this one's so... Oh, I got stunned out of it, but... Yeah, I can still fire the lance, but... I have to be able to function well enough to build up the charges, and they're swarming. Ah, yeah, there was some kind of degen there. Where does it spawn me? Okay, up here. It's fine. 2 guilts and an ire. I really thought this would be the place where you go to get the better emotions, and I got 1 despair so far. It's a T7 of 10. So we got life damage, Res, stun buildup, removes charges on wave 15. I don't think this is going to be like harder monsters than wave 10, just more of it. But you have to get through it. And so far, I think I'm within the number of portals it would have provided previously. Well, there's no way I'm making it through the rest of this without dying. Like, they're so tanky. I only get so many life flasks to push. And yeah, they're stealing my charge. Like, yeah, that's a thing. Like, that's why it's not functioning. I don't have my charges. Yeah, if your build requires charges to, like, actually deal damage, like, that is brutal mod. Okay, now I can fight the Kosas, I think. That didn't one-shot me. That's nice. I don't know what that purple whirlwind thing was. Okay. Try and build my charges up. Like, fire the explosives before I get hit. Yeah, I got hit. All charges gone. Fireballs aren't as dangerous as they seem to be in PoE 1. But there's a discrepancy between spells and attacks in PoE 1. Those are projectiles, so I believe I can evade and block them. And yeah, it's a bit of a longer fight. You would expect that with the 100% delirious. Maybe it doesn't need to go to 100% delirious in difficulty 1. That could be how they change it. Because this is, like, this is rough for a boss. Like, I might have to fight multiple more times. Okay, 2 guilt, 2 ire, greater jeweler's orb, and the stuff I didn't pick up, nothing worth there. Okay, more life, damage, speed, bleed, evasive. No charge steal this time. Alright. So their evasive means I got lower crit chance, chance to hit. But I can kill, I can manage enough to kill them as long as I'm not completely swarmed. And I have my charges. Another Kosas. I think the last one was, like, worse. I think they had life and Res last time. With the charge steal, this time they don't have as much tankiness, I don't think. Oh, there's chaos balls. I gotta dodge. I gotta dodge those circles plus the boss. Ah. Did I get the plants? I think the volatile plants are gone. It might just be Kosas. Oh, I'm bleeding. Bleeding. Okay. Build up frenzy charges here. Hopefully get a crit. Ow. That wasn't even a full circle like the one down there or up here. Yeah, if he didn't have that ES phase, like, can I just fight him? Like, his HP is not that crazy. Well, then you gotta go through this. Where he... he just continuously builds that ball up that he'll explode. He's got, like, throwing projectiles. He, like, throws his swords, I think. Okay. Go inside that. Oh, he put another ball down there. And back to this. No charges. Almost there. Then only 3 more rounds after this one. Oh, that was such a... that was ridiculously huge. No? No respawn that time. Well, no Simulacrum win this time either. 15 ires, 13 guilts, 1 greed, 2 paranoia, and a despair. Yeah, that is brutally difficult. This helmet's pretty nice. A lot of life on there. With the hybrid ES life, 2 resists, some life regen. Give them an exalt. Accuracy. That's not always a terrible thing anymore with this ascendancy class. So it indeed did not give me infinite revives in that. I don't know how many deaths I took. I feel like it was more than the 6, or maybe it was just the 6 and it booted me out of that one still. But upcoming change, they will lower the difficulty of that. A big thing that was happening there was this. 36% increased monster damage is insane to deal with. I think. If they have damage as extra lightning, which is also around a 40% roll that you get on maps, that ends up being 10% more damage because you mitigate 75% of what's lightning through your resistances. So that's a slight increase in damage, and if they crit, they could shock now, right? 40% damage means if you don't have the fizz mitigation, which is every character except the armor stackers, and you need a lot of armor to tank the big hits, but increasing the damage makes the big hits bigger, makes your armor less effective. Like, those physical slam type things, like, it's all gonna do so much damage. I think that monster damage mod is probably the worst thing that's on maps. I am more afraid of the monster damage than I am of this double damage is extra fire, damage is extra chaos. Damage is extra fire plus Ellie pin, that's pretty scary. But just a single damage is extra isn't near as terrifying as that. The Ellie pin, I'm not as afraid of this as I am of the increased monster damage. The same with the minus max. I am more afraid of that monster damage than anything else. And if that monster damage shows up with a damage is extra, or the Ellie pin, like any of these other things, like that map is just seriously almost not doable because the damage is too high in the maps. But I think that is where I am going to stop with PoE 2 for now. I've actually enjoyed the endgame so much that I could absolutely keep grinding in it and keep trying to get better gear for my character. That's really what it is at this point. It's just continued grind. And you will see me come back to this at some point and we'll try out a new character. But that's going to do it for now. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button as it really helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss more videos from me. If you'd like to help support my channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon just below the video, or by joining to become a member. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.